Hi everyone, please subscribe. It really helps the channel. Thank you. If you're wondering why I haven't been posting lately, it's because I got a little sick. I picked up a pretty bad head cold. And in my case, the astrological explanation is really clear. It has something to do with where Saturn and Mars have been recently and sort of still are, though they're moving away. Now, in my defense, I did try for the most part to avoid this, but you know what happens sometimes. You try to cover your bases, etc., and then 2 or 3 things can line up in a way to take you down, and such is what happened. Now, in the case of our unbelievably moronic president, he too is under Saturn and Mars, although, if I want to say in his defense, though not really, because there is no real defense here, but he has all kinds of planets challenging him. But if we focus specifically on Saturn and Mars, and even more specifically on Saturn, because Saturn is the planet that, when it connects to something important in your chart, it's liable to cause trouble. But what you don't do is walk yourself into the hornet's nest. Now, you already know from prior videos that he was engaged in this in March. The whole thing around tariffs, he kept talking about it. I brought up the fact that tariffs relate to the 8th sign in a chart. The 8th sign or the 8th house, however you want to label it, which in his chart is Pisces, and is exactly where Saturn is, or rather, in this case now, has been squaring his sun and his moon. But in terms of this latest barrage, early April, Saturn's still there, and he implements this absolute insanity, which makes no sense mathematically, philosophically. The whole thing is a total disaster. And on top of that, now as we move further into April and then May, Jupiter energy is increasing in his chart. Now you have to understand something about this guy, because you then might ask, well, if Saturn went through there and it correlates with him doing tariffs, is that because Saturn at his birth is somehow telling him to do that? No, it's Jupiter that encourages him to think in this way, because that 8th sign, Pisces, is Jupiter ruled. It's also Neptune co-ruled. But then Neptune in his chart is wired to be totally delusional, squaring his Mercury opposite Eris. That is a very unhelpful planet. Jupiter is at least mixed. It's responsible for all the luck in his life, being stationary at birth, trine his sun, sextile his moon, etc. But it rules the 8th sign in his chart. Now, on one level, that's great for separating people from their money. He's really good at that, no question. And manipulating debt, which he's done all his life. It's good for that. But it rules that house, means it rules all of it, not just part of it. That house rules anything that has to do with taxes, insurance, other people's money, obviously, banking. Tariffs are a form of taxes. They're levies. And so this is why he's obsessed. He thinks, he's convinced that Jupiter being expansive, I do this and it's going to bring the country wealth, it's going to bring me wealth, it makes so much sense, I have insight into this. No, you don't. You've got it all wrong. Part of it is that Jupiter isn't perfect either, even though it's a very strong planet. it does square planets in his 12th sign, among which is Saturn and Venus, right? So, and the point being, what's the role of Saturn today? Saturn today is in that spot in the 8th sign, making the squares, and you have to realize, where does Saturn live at birth? Saturn lives in his 12th. Go online or type it into an AI engine and ask, what is the meaning of the 12th house? And one of the key meanings is, it's the house of self-undoing. This means planets there become that. They're a threat to do that. This is why the last thing you do, on a Saturn square especially, is make a move like this. It's essentially a form of suicide. It's never going to work. Right? Anyways, now it's done. As I was saying, we've got Jupiter for the next close to a couple of months building. Now it becomes the second problem, that he's stubborn, he's stupid, and he's relentless as well. And of course, like all stupid people, full of pride. And so he's very unlikely to back down. And because the Jupiter is ascendant, he may get a few wins here and there. He already has had a couple of good results from the Supreme Court. Possibly the market doesn't completely tank right away. It may be a slow decomposing of sorts. But main point is, on his own, he's very unlikely to back down. Of course, we're starting to see some splintering develop among his support, which, you see, the Saturn rules the 6th sign in his chart, which is the place of his underlings, which he's turned them all into underlings. Now, at this point, even the congressmen have, in a sense, become his employees. But they're the ones now that stand to be hurt. It's one thing to say they're hurting financially, because they all have money in the market, or many of them do, but also electorally. And even though there are many people who may think we'll never have elections again, well, we just had one recently, and it didn't go very well. And though, the Doge master, the douchebag, poured, at least 20 million into it, didn't seem to help. When I suppose he could have just used the magical powers of Starlink or some other thing, to alter the voting machines, but he didn't. And I suspect we're going to see more of this in future elections. This is part of what the Democrats, can look forward to in terms of a positive outcome, and negativity for the Republicans going all the way to next year's midterms. And this is unlikely to change, this pattern, because, first of all, he's got the Jupiter for a couple of months, but then Jupiter entering Cancer is no help at all. That's his 12th sign, Cancer. Jupiter going in there pretty quickly moves into alignment with that T-square of his. Not a good thing. And the other thing is that in astrology you look into future months to see where things are going. And you see that as we head toward the end of the year, Saturn, which right now is starting to move later and later in Pisces, will then enter Aries during the summer. Then in the fall, backtracks into Pisces, and it makes its way all the way back to where it is today, essentially, near the end of the year, except that it's going to be making a station. And if you think this is bad, wait till you see that. Now, of course, your mind can immediately project and think, oh my God, the country is going to be in even worse shape. That may not be true. He's going to be in worse shape. 100% guaranteed. At minimum, he reaches that point probably having totally fractured the GOP's electoral chances in 2026. Right? So that's what's coming up. It's unavoidable. Right? Now, in the meantime, if you think, well, what else could happen? I said earlier, multiple planets are encircling this guy. And one of these is the planet Uranus, which you probably have heard is going to be entering Gemini soon, for a while at least. It also backtracks and then goes into Taurus for a while in retrograde, but then next year goes back into Gemini to stay for the next 7 years. But before it does that, meaning between now and next year, it's in degrees that are very dangerous to this guy. Up there, elevated at the top of the chart, squaring his Mars and his ascendant. This is what, in my opinion, was the biggest reason for what happened last year to him, when there was an attempt on his life. And planets don't do the same thing every single time. I mean, they could. It's possible. There are psychics out there predicting another attempt and so forth. Not necessarily, but it's signaling danger. And when you look at that together with what Saturn is doing in the 8th sign, and Neptune is doing, Pluto is contributing to an extent as well, Eris for sure, Jupiter itself, because Jupiter has a short range here for him, doesn't have much left in its journey through Gemini. So this points to his health and well-being as being constantly on the line. But if he manages to somehow dodge it, which he could, then he's facing the other outcome, which I'm telling you is not a good scene at all. So my counsel to everyone, and I know that now it's getting harder and harder because lots and lots of people are more and more worried because either they face a job loss, or if they are looking at their 401k, they're seeing it being eroded. My counsel is hang in there. This is one of those periods in history that is very, very tough because of bigger patterns that are going on in the world, which are reflected astrologically. When you see planets in the same place as they were during the Civil War of the 1860s, as well as during the Second World War period, you know that the world is realigning. At the moment, I hate to say it, I don't think it's realigning well for the U.S. It just isn't, It's because of this guy, essentially. There may be problems that we need to deal with, and if they were dealt with in an intelligent way, we'd have a chance, to perhaps not be as imperious and as powerful as we have been, but certainly not being as pushed back as we probably will be as a result of this. But in the meantime, we have to hang in there, to, at minimum, push back on these people. I think it's great that there have been so many demonstrations. Unfortunately, I couldn't make the demonstration because I wasn't feeling well, but I definitely intend to be at the next one that I'm able to, no question. Or, constantly talking to our Congress people, creating pressures from every direction, to force people to take action on the government level. And yes, I know there are all kinds of things that are scary. Yes, when you hear that he's doing something to get around the law, or when you hear one of his minions say the same thing. Yes, it's true. But, we simply have to fight onward. There are no options here. Any other option is defeatist and will not help, will not work. So I urge everyone to stay in the fight, even while personally, and this is really, really critical as well, probably even more important, personally, yes, stay in it, stay attentive, do everything you can in the outer world, but take care of your inner world, meaning you have to find a way to locate the calm place in yourself, which, by the way, can be as simple as making a relationship with your own breath for a few minutes every single day. If you do that, what happens is, let's say you choose 10 minutes. Of course, it's not going to solve all your problems immediately, but it'll start to create a kind of a seed effect. Slowly but surely, you'll start to get it. You'll start to understand why it's important to stay calm, despite the fact that the situation in the external world is really challenging right now. And from that vantage point, what can happen to many people, if they take that approach, the approach of staying engaged, staying in the fight, even while remaining calm, they then will look back on this period as probably the most important time in their lives in terms of developing themselves, understanding life better, including all the way to being more prosperous in their lives as well. All right, I'll stop there for now. May it go better than this soon.